Good evening and welcome to the show. It is Monday night, and of course, that means it's time for the Anglo-Italian pod. Monday night Euro review show. A bit of a mouthful, but we got there in the end. As always, my name is Rory, and I'm joined by my very good friends
Adam and
Ben. How you doing, guys?
How are you doing, boys? All good, all good. Ben, I'm going to start with you because there's big news in order. Despite Spurs, you still had a fantastic weekend hitting 10K on TikTok, right? Congratulations.
Yeah, I did. Thank you, mate. That kind of offset the bad vibes from Saturday. So that was a nice thing to get over the line on Sunday. Been working hard, grinding towards it for a while. So it was nice. And yeah, lots of nice messages and stuff. So it's been a good weekend despite despite how poor Spurs were on Saturday. But yeah, nice one, mate. I appreciate that.
No, honestly, when I saw it come up, like I think Adam shared it or saw it on Twitter, it was fantastic to see. Delighted about it. Adam, how are you doing, man? Good weekend?
yeah, not too bad, not too bad. We played out the El Clasico and Bucks. It was the M40 derby. We shared a point between Wickham and Oxford United, so not a bad point. For anything, I was a bit disappointed. But more importantly, Rory, how was your weekend as well?
It was very busy. It was the missus's girlfriend, so lots of dinners and drinks and presents, etc. It was good. It was nice to be busy for a weekend, I suppose. But now I'm knackered heading into the week, which is never a good thing. But there was I still managed to catch plenty of football. Arsenal did make me smile. The Alex, after a massive statement win, of course, disappointed, but we're still up there. We're still doing well, so not bad at all.
Good.
But this show, we do have lots and lots to talk about. So, of course, we'll be talking about all the action in the Premier League, the title race, Man City slipping up, Liverpool making light work of Brentford, and Arsenal continuing on. We'll be talking about Mason Holgate, is that his name? Mason Holgate, and Ahmed Ahmedovich, who's now one of my favourite players in the Premier League, and we'll be talking about Højlund at Kenilworth Road. Of course, in Serie A, we'll be talking about, is the Scudetto race done? Have Juve handed it over? It's looking increasingly finished. Who's getting dragged into the relegation fight, and why are Napoli already replacing their manager? And it is any FM player's dream when we get there. You'll be more than familiar with the story that's happening there. But let's start in the Premier League, and we're going to start with Liverpool making light work of Brentford in a 4-1 win. A game that I think on Friday's show, we were all saying we're expecting Brentford to get a point here. We're expecting Brentford to put a bit up a fight. But Thomas Frank, for a man who's supposed to be like a set-piece genius, leaving one man back for an attacking corner, to me, doesn't seem like a tactical genius, I'll be honest. But despite that, Liverpool played incredibly well. Adam, what did you make of Brentford's performance? Their defending was atrocious before we get to Liverpool, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's been, I think, a real worry for a lot of Brentford fans at the moment is their form of late. And I know that we kind of, I suppose, the neutrals expect them to pull through this, but they are genuinely worried about whether they're going to stay up in the Premier League at this rate. I know Ivan Toney's come back in the fold and they were expecting him to be the catalyst for the second part of the season. But I think there's obviously a lot more worries across the kind of team at the moment. And as you alluded to about the corner routine, that was also a combination of Thomas Franks using the statistics that Brentford rely on so heavily. So I suppose being the betting man that the owner, Matthew Benham, is all about, he's all about taking chances. And I suppose the hypothesis of having so many people back when you could have them in attack. So that's the rationale behind that kind of decision making. But again, yeah, it's a bit worrying at the moment because I don't think they have too much trust in their goalkeeper, Flacken, to be fair, at times. And yeah, defensively, they do look a bit all over the place. I think it all stems to that middle of the park, but also the outlets. I mean, if you think about Mbeumo and Wisa, they've been missing for the part of the season that they really needed them there as well. So yeah, it's a bit tight going into the next few fixtures, but I suppose one caveat, I suppose, is that they are still trying to get results together. And I think with Malpe and Tony up front, they're going to cause a lot of opposition defenses, a lot of issues. But on this day, Liverpool were just clinical, I would say. And yeah, I mean, when you've got a finish like Darwin Núñez, I mean, you can't defend against that.
That finish was unbelievable. But also, is it Jota that heads it down for him on the run? That's a fantastic header to put it on a plate for him. But that finish, I think, and I said it on our group chat, of course he didn't just calmly slot it into the corner. He fucking piles it 9 foot in the air and it just drops perfectly. It's the most Nunez finish ever. What a goal. Definitely my favourite goal of the weekend. Incredible. But Ben, for Liverpool, just an incredibly, again, just this attack is just so dangerous and so clinical every single time they go forward. It's frightening to watch, right?
Yeah, when you've got someone that I mean, I thought Darwin Núñez showed so much calm and poise to finish in the way that he did, but the word we normally associate with him is chaos, and that is what he brings alongside that calmness in front of goal, which we haven't seen in the last few weeks. It was, the Chelsea game where he hit the woodwork 3 or 4 times, and it just wasn't quite happening for him. But what he brings is that chaos across that back line for Brentford or whichever opposition team they face, the ability to drag players out of position. And when you've got players around him, like Jota, like Salah obviously coming back and getting his goal off the bench, and Diaz as well, they're just able to run defences ragged. They're so fluid, they're so interchangeable, and they're just frightening going forward. And to be fair as well, I thought it wasn't just all about the attack for Liverpool either. I thought Endo and McAllister in particular in midfield were excellent as well. I think that was one of Endo. I think Endo's slowly been getting there for Liverpool. And obviously there is a question around whether Liverpool will look to sign someone of more of a higher profile to come in and play that sort of 6 role in the summer. And obviously losing Curtis Jones is a big miss for them. Hopefully he recovers quickly, because I've been super impressed by him this season. I think he's got a real outside shout for the Euros as well, if he continues on that kind of trajectory. But Liverpool just devastating going forward. That goal, Darwin Núñez's goal, was just like, it was like the bet. Well, I think we talked about it a few weeks ago. There was another example of the Brentford fans just say it, like giving it the old way when he tries to chip it, and then they suddenly realise that it's landing in the over the keeper and going in. And just like, there's only one player in the league I think that could finish like that, and it's him. Just to take that on, so I was so impressed with that. And then going forward, the rest of the goals as well were just ruthless. But again, Brentford just all over the place at the back. I mean, they're without Ethan Pinnock until after the March international break now, I believe, which is a huge blow for them, because again, he's another player just like Curtis Jones, who could be knocking on the door for England. I've been super impressed by him. Actually, I think he's Jamaican, isn't he? I learned that earlier.
Yeah, he declared for Jamaica, I think.
I think he did, yeah. But, I mean, regardless, he's been super impressive. One player I've not been impressed by for Brentford, though, is Nathan Collins of late. Like, I know it's easy to kind of talk about that 4th goal and the way he just swiped at it and it allowed Gakpo to go through and score, or whoever it was that laid it on to Gakpo. But there's just not that calmness at the back for Brentford at the moment. I think we saw that last season with Ben Mee, who's obviously still part of this team, really kind of shore them up at the back and have that experience alongside Pinnock, who's obviously a massive blow. But it feels like they've shifted to a back 3. They're playing with the wing backs in Roerslev and Reguilon, who Reguilon started pretty well there, but I thought he was really poor on Saturday. And like, that's kind of the level that we saw at Tottenham for a lot of the time. Just not really composing the ball, a little bit too erratic. And when you've got a front line as devastating as Liverpool's, it's not a good mix. But Liverpool, devastating. But I think Brentford, they're only 5 points above Luton, and that can change very, very quickly. I know obviously Luton will be disappointed with the result of the weekend, and I think that says a lot about where they are if they're going to be disappointed about that. But Brentford could get sucked into it, and I don't think it's enough to rely on Tony and Malpe. And I know they're missing the firepower of Mbeumo and Whistler as well, who have been excellent for them over the last couple of years, but they could be in trouble. They can't. I mean, Tony bagged the goal at the weekend, but it's just not going to be enough if they play like that.
No, well, I think you're absolutely right, and the strength shown by the defender for the Salah goal as well is just so. I know Salah's like a unit and he's a dude, but it's just schoolboy defending there, just absolutely shrugged off the ball with ease, and it was just embarrassing at times. But I think with the attack, like Mopai, he's scored a few goals this season. He's done all right, but he doesn't have the pace and the consistent danger that Mbeumo and Wissa have. And I just think it takes away a lot of, like, one of the main things about Brentford is that they catch you on the break, right? Yeah. They soak up, and when they go, they go. And with Mopai, you just don't quite have that. So I think we're seeing obviously a much more toothless attack. And then, the defending in the midfield was just nowhere to be seen. I think you were right to point out that Pinnock is a huge, huge miss there. We also have to say that Rico Henry, who was such an incredible player for them, has been missing basically the entire season at this point. And I think as much as Reguilon is a fairly decent Premier League player, I think with Rico Henry, they're much more dangerous again going forward. I think they should still have enough to stay up. But I think it's going to be a very nervy end to the season for Brentford fans, regardless, because I think it's still going to be by a few points. If you know what I mean, I don't think they're suddenly going to pull away. But for Liverpool, incredible win. But Adam, we wanted to talk about injuries. Now, 3 players going off injured. Now, as you said, Curtis Jones off, Darwin Núñez off, but doesn't look that serious. The one that could be serious, and the stories coming out of Portugal today is it's going to be 3 or 4 months, is Diogo Jota. He's obviously been incredible for them since he's come into the team, which has, again, kind of been forced by injuries and by AFCON, right? When he's come in, he's been incredible. How much do you think these injuries could affect Liverpool? Because I think this season they've actually had quite a few injuries, and in general, well, they're still top. They've handled it quite well, right? But how do you expect them to do with these?
Yeah, I think Jota, though, is a different case in the respect that when he's called upon, he's always the creator / he's always on the end of things. Like, he always gambles, tries to do the simple things, right? And I think from that point of view, you could tell straight away from that impact of, I think it was Janelt or was it Jensen that falls on top of him. And that obviously is more than just like, oh, he can run it off in a few weeks' time. I think that's quite bad injury for him, especially the way he kind of fell onto it. So I think if you kind of look at the other options, yes, that gives them the opportunity, the likes of Harvey Elliott potentially to step into the fold, because we don't really know where Harvey Elliott's best position. But I think if he can kind of mimic what Jota does, then there's a huge opportunity there. But I do think that's going to be a huge miss, given that he's held a fold for Salah in recent weeks. And I think obviously we've got to remember Liverpool got quite the fixture list going forward, because they've got the Carabao final in a few weeks' time. We've got the league, and then they've got Europe as well, which I think they're still trying to go for. So I think the fixtures are going to take a toll on this squad. I mean, it still doesn't just isolate Liverpool. I think it's many squads in that respect, but injuries at this point of the season is probably not welcome for Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, and they've got City coming up relatively soon. I think only in a couple of games. They've got City away, I think it is. So yeah, they're going to need a few of those back. But incredible win for them. Brentford, we're sure you'll be fine, but it was pretty ugly viewing at times. We're going to leave Brentford there, and we're going to go up to Manchester. I really enjoyed Haaland throwing a hissy fit at the end of this game and pushing the camera away from him. Now, I think he had a game similar to this last year. I think it was Forest away, maybe, where all of a sudden he just couldn't score and everything he hit just went over. It was mad to see it happen again, though, Ben. How many? I think he had an XG of 1.2 something on his own.
Yeah, I think it was higher than that. I think it was like 1.7 something. It was the most players created in the Premier League without scoring this season. It was like it was so unlike him, especially as well with, the classic. Apart from sort of like the work it to the byline and cut it back for someone to sweep it in, the archetypal City goal of recent years has been that De Bruyne whipped early cross towards the back post with Haaland running onto it, or maybe in years gone by Sterling at the back post, or whoever coming in to finish it. But certainly in the last couple of seasons, it's been that De Bruyne ball to Haaland. And I think it was 2 or 3 times where De Bruyne put it on a plate for him with a perfect cross. And I mean, it was so unlike him. It's like people sort of call him the robot, but obviously it feels like he needs a factory reset or something. And you sort of saw him go like he went after the game and he sort of threw that sort of tantrum. Obviously, we saw it in the Tottenham game where they didn't get that decision go their way when the advantage wasn't played. So he can be quite volatile like that. But I think it's because he knows that was a huge opportunity for City, especially with a game in hand coming up as well to sort of, I mean, to say to keep themselves in it is crazy because it's Manchester City and they are very much still alive. But you know what I mean? It's kind of like that thing of like, that is 2 points drop for them, really. I thought Chelsea were pretty impressive, but I still think on another day, City win that quite comfortably. Chelsea poised the threat on the break. I think a lot of teams go into the Etihad. I mean, City's record against the top teams this season isn't that great. They lost away to Arsenal, drawn at home to Liverpool, Tottenham and Chelsea, and drew away to Chelsea. So it wasn't a massive surprise. I wasn't overly convinced. I think it's because I was in my pessimistic state of, like Spurs have lost, Arsenal have battered Burnley. Of course, Chelsea are going to go to the Etihad and get something. But I did kind of genuinely feel like they might have done. And I think it just wasn't Haaland's day. But then I fear for whoever they've got next, because I'm sure he'll probably take it out on them. But I think it's
Brentford, isn't it? I think it's Brentford.
I think it might be. Yeah, I think it is. Because it was the game that I think it's the game coming up that was rescheduled when. They didn't play in the The Club,
the Club World Cup,
Cup,
right?
I think it's this week, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, Brentford obviously on the hand of a battering from Liverpool. I think they might face Erling Haaland's wrath as well, to be honest. And obviously that's City's game in hand as well. So there's more kind of pressure on that in a way. But I mean, if I was a City fan, I wouldn't be too worried. They've kind of been in this position so many times before where they've not been playing catch up, but they've kind of like almost had to do it the hard way, and they turn into this just machine towards the end of the season. But it was strange seeing Haaland miss that kind of chances. And obviously, there was a stat they brought up on Sky during the game talking about how his underperformance and overperformance of XG from this season and last season. I think last year he scored maybe 7 or 8 goals more than he should have, and this year he's underperforming on his expected goals. So maybe he's become a little bit less clinical. Obviously, he's had that injury that's kind of derailed his season a little bit, but I still think he's the top scorer in the league, and I'm sure against Brentford, he'll find the back of the net, if not once, but twice.
Yeah, he will still finish top scorer of the league. We know that's going to happen. And yeah, as the board draw said, it could be a very, very long night for Brentford midweek. But Adam, for Chelsea, they play much better when they're the underdogs. I think when they're like not expected to do anything, their style matches that a bit more. I think they're able to just sit in, play on the break, and just kind of. As long as it's not Nicholas Jackson on the end of the chances, you should be able to put them away. I don't know if anybody, including him, believed that was going to go in. But Chelsea, they defended pretty well, lucky at times, but it's an encouraging result and performance for them, right?
Yeah, and I would say, look, Mauricio Pochettino knows how to get a result at Man City. I mean, Ben will know from his time at Spurs as well. I mean, he did allude to it as well post-match and said, if you're going to take on Man City, if you're going to allow them time on the ball, you're just accepting that the inevitable is going to happen. And I suppose to an extent in the second half, you kind of saw that because they were just so knackered by the end of it. And they did try to be on the front foot at times, especially when you look at the first half in isolation. Cole Palmer and Raheem Sterling knew the kind of weak points of that Man City defense. And, when you're trying to force them into that half, then Man City have to think about how they're going to approach that game. So I think Pochettino approached it in the right manner. He got the kind of right personnel to do the pressing. And you saw that also towards the kind of, I think it was last 10 minutes where you saw Sam Gallagher almost running by himself at times because he's waiting for more support at times. And he had the right kind of philosophy. He knew he had to sit in at times because you knew the juggernaut of Man City, they're just going to continuously just pressurize you with either shots on goal or just create opportunities. They're obviously fortunate by the fact that Haaland's only had, I think, 3 headed goals this season. And, that is probably what I would say is his weakest part of his kind of game, is that actually probably for as tall as he is and almost target man like, he doesn't score enough with his head. He's much more comfortable with his feet, which is such a weird kind of combination. But that is Haaland. He is that freak. He is kind of unique in that respect. And I think that's the element that maybe teams will start picking up on is, go on, just throw it in the air to us. We'll just absorb it as best as we can. But yeah, I think there was a few off games. Jerry Doku didn't really have the best of Gostu as well on that right-hand side. So I think, there's elements of those head-to-heads as well that Chelsea did really well. So full of praise to Chelsea in the way they approached it. But I suppose Chelsea fans will be just annoyed that they've managed to do it against Man City twice, for example, but they're not doing it consistently. And that's the thing that's probably annoyed them. But this is really promising in the build-up towards that kind of cup final now. So I think that's the thing to aim towards. And, that's promising signs. Look, if they can just mimic that kind of approach to the Liverpool game, who knows? But full of praise for Chelsea in the way they approached this match.
I think it was fantastic for them. But Ben, I did want to just, the last talking point on this, did Pochettino take Cole Palmer off too early? I feel like once he took him off, I feel like Chelsea could have got another one, or if they were ever going to get another one, it was going to be through Cole Palmer. And I feel like the second he comes off, it takes away all threat of Chelsea ever getting another goal. Do you think he was just a bit too conservative there? Because I feel like some Chelsea fans I've seen online were like, just leave him there. We know he's our danger guy, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think we've learned from various teams that have gone to City this season and got something. If you can stay in the game, there will be chances for you. And Adam alluded there to Gallagher and talking about how important he was in the game and the fact that they were able to kind of soak up that pressure and have someone of his energy to kind of help them on the transition go forward and create some chances on the counter-attack. But they just didn't have the quality in the final third of someone like Palmer, who I agree probably came off too soon. Because we know that Chelsea, for all their good play a lot of the time this season, they haven't been anywhere near as clinical as they should be in the final third. And Palmer is the only one that's kind of consistently shown that calmness in front of goal, whether it's in a creative sense or whether it's in a goal scoring sense. So I think you're right, because like I said, City's record against the top teams this season isn't great. We kind of showed it that if you can stay in the game, you can go and nick something late on, and ours was an equaliser. Liverpool had the same with Trent. Liverpool didn't really play that well at the Etihad, but soaked up a lot of pressure from City and were able to get themselves a draw out of it. And, I think there may be a chink in City's armour there that City didn't quite exploit, because they know that they can hurt them. They've already done it this season. And although they were on the back foot for large parts of that game, especially in the second half, I think Disasi was incredible. I've been a little bit unsure on Disasi. I think he started really well at Chelsea, then has sort of faded in the last few weeks. But that was a performance almost reminiscent of Rudiger a little bit, the way he was sort of bumping his chest and having that sort of aura at the back. And another player you mentioned there quickly as well was Gusto. I've been really impressed with Gusto. I think he's been one of the best bits of business that Chelsea have done in the last kind of 18 months or so, because I think especially when you consider the fact that James is, we always say the best ability is availability, right? And he's hardly ever there, as good as he is. And I think if they've got someone now who can kind of consistently fulfill that role to a level not too far off what James has showed, I've been really, really impressed by him. But I think maybe he was a little bit too conservative, Poch. And I think there was an opportunity for Chelsea to get something, because you saw in the first half, they constantly caught City out on the counter-attack. And there was space in behind for them. And that was one thing as well. Like with Nicholas Jackson, it's a funny one, because I think although in front of goal, he doesn't quite have that. And I am going to give Poch some praise, because I feel like moving him over to the left has actually help Chelsea's attack feel a little bit more balanced, because I think he runs those channels really hard. He's not an amazing ball carrier, but I think in terms of the balance of the system, especially if they've got someone like Nkunku to come back to add firepower to that, which means Jackson can be more of a, I guess, sacrificial player in a way that kind of gives everything for the team, but you don't have to rely on him as much in front of goal. Then I kind of think Poch is sort of starting to slowly figure things out a little bit, but I was a bit surprised, because I felt like there was an opportunity for Chelsea to get there with how frustrated City were getting, how well Chelsea were defended. And like I said, it could have easily been 3 or 4-1 to City if Haaland puts his chances away. But in another world, Chelsea are walking away with a win, and I do think that would have been enhanced if Cole Palmer was on the pitch.
Yeah, I just feel like he pulled it out a bit too early, unfortunately, and kind of surrendered the game a bit. But of course, Rodri gets the goal. A kind of hidden or forgotten aspect of his game is that he just gets the key goal every single time. It's insane. But as we said again, they've got the midweek to make up for it. So RIP Brentford. We feel sorry for you, I suppose. But just very quickly, because I have to mention it, Arsenal won by 5 goals. That's 11 goals in 2 games. Bukayo Saka is world class. Go and argue with yourselves if you've been arguing about it on Twitter. Next, we are going to go to, sorry, Ben, but we need to go to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And the one-man counter-attack that is Pedro Neto, I am desperate for him to arrive at the Emirates. What happened here? I saw a very, very prickly Ange at the end of the game. He really wasn't happy, mate. What happened?
I think it was just so substandard from what we've seen this season. I think I was trying to work it out in my match review after the game. I can't quite figure out where it actually went wrong. It was just incredibly flat. The crowd was pretty flat from the off as well. It just felt like one of those days where, we've had it so many times over the years where we've had bogey teams come to White Hart Lane and the new stadium and sort of just like you turn up, sit in your seat and we're going to draw or lose this today. We've been there so many times, and Wolves have sort of become that team for us. I was full of praise for them when they beat us at Molineux earlier on in the season. It was kind of the first game that we had after our squad was decimated after the Chelsea one. I didn't think they were quite as impressive this time around. I just thought we lost it because we were so poor. I think obviously it shows how much of a miss that Porro and Udogie are to us as well. I don't think we've got adept replacements for them in the squad. Bless him, but Emerson Royale just cannot do that. And I think as much as if you're playing a flat back 4, Emerson Royale's not bad. He's really not bad. He's shown that he can defend well this season at centre back as well, as has Ben Davies. And I thought Ben Davies adapted to the system a hell of a lot better than Emerson did. I think when you consider how important someone like Pat Matasar has been for Spurs as well this season, and the sort of spaces that those inverted fullbacks want to take up, they're quite often overlapping and interchanging with that respective central midfielder on that side. But it just felt like Emerson didn't adapt to the system and was just getting in Sarr's way. And there was runs that one of them should have been making, but it was almost just they're looking at each other like, are you going to go? Or whereas with Porro, there's that far more natural relationship. Hopefully they'll be back for the Palace game. Spurs obviously aren't playing this weekend with Chelsea being in the League Cup final. And I'm very glad about that because I have been impressed with Chelsea in recent weeks. So I wouldn't have wanted to go to Stamford Bridge without both of our fullbacks and arguably two of our most important players missing. But it was just flat. Richarlison, he's had an amazing run, but it's just sort of the last couple of games, the performance hasn't quite been there. Balls are bouncing off him. He keeps slipping over, not holding the ball up as well. Sonny as well, kind of coming back into the team from the Asian Cup, couldn't quite get into the game. Maddison doesn't quite look fully at it yet. Again, it was kind of without Van der Ven and Vicario, once again showing how important signings they've been. Wolves could have had another couple. And I think the frustrating thing is for how poorly Tottenham were and didn't necessarily deserve to win the game with what we created. We didn't create many proper chances. Ben Davies had a great chance at the end, and Kulusevski took his goal really, really well. But the two goals were just incredibly naive defending. The first one, no marking from a set piece. I think we've talked a lot about Vicario in recent weeks about how the Spurs deal with protecting him from corners with kind of the onslaught that he's faced in the Brentford game, the City game, and the Everton game a few weeks ago. But it's almost like Spurs were too focused on that and just left so much space in the penalty area. It was a free header for João Gomez.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe what I was watching. And then the second goal, Basuma gives it away sloppily on the halfway line. But with the kind of high-risk football that we played, that can happen. But the way Emerson Royale tracks back with Neto, and I know I love Pedro Neto, and it is my dream for Spurs to sign him in the summer. I think he is the perfect profile for what we're kind of lacking in terms of that one-on-one direct winger. And Ange was talking about this after the game in the sense that we don't quite have that individual player in our attacking line to win a game on their own. We've got so much quality, but when we're playing poorly, we previously had a Harry Kane or a Gareth Bale to really step up and take the game by the scruff of the neck and win it out of nothing. And don't get me wrong, Son can be that. He definitely can, but you can't just rely on him all the time. So we need that exciting, energetic, kind of dribbly winger that can do that for us. And Neto showed exactly what we were missing on Saturday. But the way Emerson Royale he happily just shows him down the line. And it's almost like, well, you're on your wrong foot. You're not going to, you're not going to hurt me. But it's like he just breezes past him. And then we don't track the run of João Gomez. And it's 2-1. And quite frankly, Wolves deserved it. But I think it was more about the fact that we didn't deserve it. But I think it's just a bit of a, hopefully a blip. I think the 2 week break will give us a little bit of time to recharge, get a couple more players back like Porro and Udogie and go again, because Spurs have got a really tricky April. We've got a decent March. We've got Villa away, which now with United's win and Villa's win at the weekend is going to be massive as well. So we've got an important couple of weeks coming up. So we need to kind of get back and play and get into a good position to take on Palace in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, hopefully it was just one of those things. I completely understand Ange's frustrations. I completely understand some people's frustrations with Ange about maybe not adapting in those sorts of games when you haven't got the players to play that role. But I think he's still trying to figure things out. I wouldn't blame him at all for that. So yeah, it's a tricky one. It's been a tough few days on Twitter, to be honest, with some fans. You see the classic kind of Ange out thing, and I've had some things in my comments.
That's fucking genius, by the way. That's absolutely brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Some people are just there to annoy. I think their only job is to annoy other people.
Yeah, I think as much as you want to block it out as well, like you have to realize that there's so many people that like to revel in their own misery on Twitter and kind of bring up their own agendas and stuff, and it's just like it's not worth engaging with it. But sometimes when you're that fucked off after a result and then you start seeing stuff like that kind of like, I think Spurs fans, and it's kind of symptomatic of football fans in general, but everyone's up for a rebuild until you lose a game. And then all of a sudden you start picking holes in absolutely everything. So we've got to remember there's perspective to be had here. So yeah, but credit to Wolves and credit to Neto, and please sign for Tottenham in summer.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think there's going to be a few clubs running after him. None of them will catch him, I think, but they'll all be running after him. But Adam, it feels like they've got Adama Traore with a footballing brain, right? He's actually got end product. It's insane. Now, of course, Gary O'Neill and Wolves will have to pay loyalties to Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool for using the fist pump that they famously copyrighted. But beyond that, it's been a fantastic weekend for Wolves and another incredible performance. Any players that stood out for you beyond Neto? This Gomez, I wasn't really aware of him until he got 2 goals.
This is it. I was trying to work and rack my brain because prior to those 2 goals against Spurs, he's scored one, and I want to say he assisted one against Man United. I think it was opening day of the season. So that's the time that I kind of think I remember him. But yeah, like you, I didn't actually know who was there. He seemed to play quite well, and I was like, all right, that's another one from the Wolves production line of, Jorge Mendes kind of tipping off these talents and they get really done. But I mean, look, Wolves are starting to believe of Europe now. If you look at the table and you look at the teams that are slightly above them, like the likes of West Ham, and they're in a spiraling kind of position that they are, there could genuinely be a case for them to go that high. I don't know if they will because, it's a big ask given that the expectations were just to stay up, especially when Lopetegui kind of left in the circumstances that he did. But I mean, for Wolves, defensively, they seem quite solid. And I'd say they just, on the counter-attack, just looks so lethal. I mean, the obvious one is Neto. I think he's been superb for them this season. And obviously having Haichan back as well.
He missed a sitter though. Jesus Christ, he missed a sitter. I'm not sure how he missed that. I'm really not sure how he missed that. But I do also like Ait Nouri as well on the left. Big fan of him, and I think there's a lot of players. I didn't realize how close they were to the European places. I've just looked at the table and I'm like, my God, they're only 2 points behind Newcastle. Like they're a little bit inconsistent, Wolves, and that's kind of what might hold them back. But then they're properly capable of making a charge, I think.
This is it. I think there's a genuine case to say if they could just make sure they're consistent for the rest of the season, who knows? It all depends on the games.
Who knows? We will see. Good work, Gary O'Neill. Absolutely smashing it. We're going to move on to Sunday. And we're going to very quickly, because I just couldn't believe this game. Let's go Sheffield United, Brighton. Project 100. Sheffield United, are they going to concede 100 goals in a season? Ben, what do we think? This is some of the worst defending in team I've seen in my life. It's incredible.
Well, obviously, we're going to come on and talk about the red card, but I think the red card is almost symptomatic of what Sheffield United are. And it's kind of, they're just giving up. They gave up after that. And it was almost like an excuse for them to sort of roll over and say, well, it's another game that we can just write off, because 5 at home to Villa, fair enough. Everything. It was one of those games where everything Villa seemed to hit went in, but they did tear them apart. Same as Brighton. It's one of those games where you remember how good Brighton actually are, despite how poor Sheffield United are. But I don't know how many goals conceded they're on now.
64, I think it
65,
is.
65.
With
how many games to go? About 15 or so games to go.
Got
13 games to go.
13 games left. They've also held 8 against Newcastle. We put 5 past them. They've had some absolute hidings. And obviously, now let's go on to the red card, because guys, or if you can do one thing in your life, find yourself a partner who backs you like Ahmed Ahmedovich backs his teammates, because that is a whole new level of delusion. Adam, for the reporter to genuinely go, really? It's not often you hear a reporter have that reaction. That is one of the worst tackles I've seen on a football pitch. Like, what was going through his head?
Yeah, I don't know what was going through his head. I think I've heard it many different interpretations, but I think he's trying to just kind of make his mark on the player, i.e., make him aware that he's going to be there and he's going to be every time. But I think he completely misjudged that. And, well, he did misjudge it, should I say. And it just missed it completely. So, but I think the larger question should be is how did the referee kind of give it as a yellow card and kind of not see it as more lethal than that? That was a bit worrying, to be fair. And as you say, that levels of delusional from his centre-back partner. I was going to say, the only time that I've seen a reporter kind of have that kind of conversation was probably when Roy Hodgson said, "You taking the piss," basically, after that West Brom.
Let's not take the fucking piss here. Like, so good.
Exactly.
Oh, good.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. I have followed him on Twitter. I'm just obsessed with the bloke. I'm absolutely obsessed with him. But Ben, for Brighton, now obviously Sheffield United were more than accommodating, but players that stood out for me here, Adingra, fresh back from AFCON. He's the next player that's going to go for like 100 million, isn't he? He's just so much fun to watch. And the first goal in particular was an incredible finish. Yeah. He just absolutely ran around Sheffield United the entire 90 minutes, right?
Yeah, I've been super impressed with him. I think Brighton, again, are like, I said this last week when we obviously beat them, and I feel like because they've been in Europe and they haven't quite stood out as much this season, because they've had results that have kind of been almost predetermined by the fact that they are tired because they're playing European football and they're not really used to that. But when you watch them play, they are super, super impressive and so well coached. And Adingra is just, I mean, he's straight off the kind of Caicedo almost production line, McAllister production line, isn't he? It feels like he's going to be the next one. I was impressed with Buonanotte again. I think he was one of those players that sort of came to light at the end of last season, and that's when he sort of caught a lot of people's eye. He's been super impressive. But I think the player that didn't necessarily stand out to me on Sunday, because that was definitely Adingra who kind of took the headlines for sure. But Billy Gilmour, I think, is having a hell of a kind of renaissance under De Zerbi. Obviously, he was almost caught in the kind of crossfire with Graham Potter, who brought him in, then all of a sudden left, and De Zerbi didn't quite fancy him at the start. But Billy Gilmour, I said it when we played them last week, he is so composed in possession. It really feels like, obviously, when he was at Rangers, there was a lot of big clubs after him, and you kind of could see that potential in him. Obviously, he struggled quite a lot when he first went to Norwich, but he's been one of the Premier League midfielders that's impressed me the most this season. It feels like his game's come on so much. It feels like as well, sitting next to Gross consistently, that experienced head who again is so calm on the ball, so, always available to receive possession, just the sort of player you want to play alongside. And they've got a few of them, to be fair, Brighton. Lallana, again, who impressed me when we played them last week. They've just got that perfect kind of blend of experience and young talent coming through. And it's no wonder that the likes of Adingra and Buonanotte and Gilmour are kind of shining because of the experience they've got in the team, in Dunk, Welbeck, Gross, Milner even at times, and Lallana. So this Brighton team, I think they could surprise a few people in Europe. I think they'll go quite far in the Europa League because I think they've got that, there's an element maybe that Premier League teams could potentially have figured out De Zerbi a little bit, but I still think they've been super impressive on occasion in the Premier League this season. But you haven't quite had that in Europe yet. They've had some really impressive nights already in the group stage, and I think they could go quite far for that reason. So I've been super impressed with Brighton, but for Sheffield United, it's looking bleak. And I think just on Holgate quickly, like, he's the sort of player that it really irritated me when Spurs played Nottingham Forest and we came up against Ryan Yates, who screamed to me one of those players that knows that they're shit, so they're just going to go around and start kicking people. And Mason Holgate, obviously I'm talking about shit in the context of Premier League players, but Mason Holgate is another one of them for me because he's had previous for this. I remember when we played them a few years ago, there was a completely unnecessarily high challenge on Højbjerg in a game at Goodison. I think it was Conte's first game, actually. And he got away with that. And there was no chance he was going to get away with that on Sunday. Matoma is so lucky that his leg wasn't straight, because otherwise that could potentially be a career ender. There's no, like, I get that sometimes you go for the ball and follow through and take the man, and it's a really ugly, nasty challenge. And you can say maybe it's a red, but you have sympathy for the player who's just gone in to win the ball and followed through. That can happen. But there was no need for his leg to be basically up at Matoma's thigh. Like, it was just... I've not seen a tackle like that since, I think it was Ben Thatcher on Pedro Mendes, going back to like the mid-2000s. Just like it was, I think there was the Ahmed, how do you say his name?
Ahmed Hodzic.
His interview after the game was just unbelievable. I was just like,
he's so good. He's so good.
Like you said, I kind of wish I had a friend or a girlfriend that stuck up for me as much as like he would for his teammate.
It's incredible. It's incredible. But I think there's a really interesting kind of comparison to be had here, and we're going to go to this next game because let's go for Manchester United as Højlund scores with his chest. But the thing, the link here I have was that Luton go down 2-0 within 7 minutes. They come back, they get back in the game, and they arguably should get something from the game. Whereas Sheffield United, the second they concede a goal, they fold like a house of cards, and the whole thing just disappears. And it just shows you how much a belief, a coaching system, whatever it is, an atmosphere in a changing room can make a difference. Because I think Rob Edwards is doing such an incredible job at Luton. Again, a game they've lost, and we'll talk about whether they deserve to or not, but just the fight that is in that team and the willingness to be like, look, we're not just going to get handed 5-6 every week. If we are going to lose, it's going to be by the odd goal. It makes such a difference because it means the next game you're heading into it not thinking, right, how many are we going to hold? It's kind of, right, let's stay in the game. I just think it's such an interesting juxtaposition between those two teams. And it really stood out to me this weekend. But let's talk about Manchester United. Let's talk about Luton. Rasmus Højlund has now broken the record for the youngest player to score in 6 consecutive Premier League games. Nothing says more to me, a striker high in confidence than scoring with your chest when you're just turning around. You just know everything's going right for you at that point. But Ben, he's been in incredible form, Højlund. And again, we've been talking about United's front line. This was an impressive performance at the beginning, right?
Yeah. I think also you've got to remember this is a Rasmus Højlund that I still think is being starved of service. I don't think, as we spoke last week about the fact that I think United have found a bit of better balance when it comes to their front four in their ability to create chances. But it felt like the chances that they did have were as a result of the way that Luton played, really came on to United in the second half and were aggressive. And most of the second half chances were on the counter-attack. But they started the game really well. I mean, they got very fortunate with the first goal. I mean, Højlund shows great composure to go round the keeper and finish it in the way that he did. And again, that shows a striker playing with confidence. And he did always feel like the sort of striker that if he gets one, we saw it in the Champions League. He scored 5 goals in 6 games, I think. And it was like, we saw that we knew that there was that capability for him to catch fire. And he really has. And I think the second finish, I wasn't sure at first. When Gary Neville was sort of like, he was going on about it on commentary, he sort of went very big on it and was like, that is genius from Højlund. And I wasn't having it at first. And then it was kind of like, yeah, I know, honestly. And then I watched it back and I was like, maybe he's right. I was like,
he's trying to put, he's trying to put it across goal, right? He's trying to put it across goal for a teammate and it goes in. It looks fantastic. Yeah. But let's not say he's aiming for the far corner with his chest. Let's not if you know what I mean.
I think it was kind of a happy accident because it was like, I completely agree. Like the diversion is purposeful. Like it doesn't just hit him. Yeah. But it's just the fact that it's been planted so perfectly in the corner. And you've got to remember as well, Kaminsky, who was super impressive during the game, is on the complete other side of the goal because he's anticipating the Garnacho shot. So it could have gone straight down the middle. It could have gone in the corner, but it still would have gone in. So, but I mean, Højlund has been super impressive over the last few weeks. It's felt like a kind of matter of time. Some of the finishes as well over the last couple of weeks have been of a striker in a real confident kind of vein of form, like the finish against Tottenham, the finish against West Ham, and the finishes yesterday as well. And I think, like I said, I still, despite the fact that I think United have figured things out a little bit in terms of their attacking balance, I still don't think he's getting anywhere near the chances that if he was in another team possibly he would be getting. I still think United are really lacking something. And I think, like you said,
they're lacking a lot of things because I still think Luton had a lot in this game. I think they had 29 shots, right? They had the majority of possession. They had, especially the second half, I think United were kind of not clinging on, but Luton were definitely kind of going for it and should have got more. Like Adam, it still feels like a win built on sand by Manchester United. I want to talk about Luton as well, but it still feels like it's built on sand, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the contrasting styles, you expect the way that Luton plays, that's what you expect Man United to come to this ground and actually display. Because I think there was a remark that this reminds you of like a cup tie, whereby Luton should be playing the way that Man United did and vice versa. But Man United, you can't kind of work out what their strategy is. I don't think anyone's kind of worked out what Ten Hag has brought to the kind of team and the way that they're playing it. But at the same time, through the kind of workings out of, I think they've managed to settle on that kind of attacking line now. I think through Garnacho, he should have easily had at least 2 of those opportunities and turned into goals, for example. So I think if they add that bit of clinical edge to their game, then probably won't worry about the aesthetics of the style of play. But I feel like at this moment in time, when you also look at the game in general, the likes of Harry Maguire for that mistake where he takes that quick free kick and it gets intercepted by Ross Barkley, for example. There's just individual areas like that. We have to allude to Casemiro being lucky to stay on the pitch as well. I think
completely.
I mean, there's a lot of conversations about has his legs gone, but I think it's not helped by the fact that people around him are so sporadic in terms of their style of football, and that has meant that the kind of focal point has been on him and highlighting it through challenges that he did. But I think in that situation, he should have definitely been a second yellow and should have been sent off. So, but quick word on Luton. I think they really did deserve this in terms of, at least getting a point out of the game, because the way they approached it, the momentum, and this, despite the fact that Adebayo was missing, obviously he should have started, but unfortunately pulled up in the kind of layup to this game. So it's a bit of a shame that he didn't turn up, because I think he would have caused the centre backs a lot of issues. The way he's been kind of doing it in the last few games, I think just disappointing. But yeah, unfortunately, it just highlighted I suppose, the expectations of how much Luton have changed and adapted to the league, and how they can kind of start dreaming about actually survival now, to be fair.
I think they've got a real chance of it. As long as they're in games like this against the kind of top sides, they're always going to have a shout. And I think they're just, incredibly impressed with them. Again, Ross Barkley, fantastic. That clip of Marcus Rashford attempting to press. Ross Barkley is one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen. But Ross Barkley, incredible again. Sambi Lokonga tearing it up. Love it. Fantastic work from Luton. But we do need to go to Italy. I'm very aware of time. So we need to go across to Serie A. And we're going to start with... I met Tommy this weekend. I bumped into him last night.
Wow.
And we were kind of talking about quietly, so how are we celebrating Inter lifting the Scudetto this year? Can we talk about it? A thumping 4-0 win against Salernitana. Obviously, Salernitana are Serie A Sheffield United, but an incredible performance from Inter. Adam, they made it look so incredibly easy. And again, fantastic goal from Thuram, an even better goal from Lautaro Martinez. Inter just keep rolling on, and Arnautovic scores. You know things are going well when Arnautovic scores.
And Dumfries, right?
And
but
Dumfries,
Salernitana probably just laid out the carpet for Inter in that respect. They really didn't offer too much. I think I could only recall Candoreva having an effort on target, and that was a bit wayward. But yeah, Salernitana weren't going to be much to offer in that respect. Fabio Pecha was in charge, wasn't he? So I've forgotten his surname even now. But yeah, obviously they had the new coach instilled for this match. Didn't offer too much. I felt sorry. Yeah, Liverani, that's it. And I felt sorry for Ochoa. He did try his best to kind of keep out these efforts, but when you've got efforts like Lautaro's, as you alluded to, I mean, just that was the clever kind of instinct that he's got in this game. And I think just that sharpness is just so scary, and it sets it up for this Champions League fixture this week, should I say. I cannot wait to see the tie between Atletico and Inter. That's going to be some game. And yeah, like you alluded to, Marcus Thuram as well, just superb as well. I mean, there's too many kind of players that you could call out in this game, but Carlos Augusto as well was really good, filling in for DeMarco as well. So
he got 2 assists.
He got assists. He was praised for it as well. Yeah,
it was the incredible performance, and we've talked about the depth on, like, maybe they've lacked depth in places, but then sometimes it all clicks and you're like, oh, there's no worries at all. Like Arnautovic had a goal disallowed as well, right? And you could see he was visibly pissed off. But then he did get the goal afterwards, so he is on the score sheet. But Carlos Augusto I was really interested in. But we do need to talk about Lautaro Martinez. He's a third player to score at least 20 goals for 3 seasons in a row in Serie A with Inter, after the legendary Giuseppe Meazza and Stefano Niez. And also, he's now the 8th top scorer in Inter's history with 125 goals. Just absolutely tearing it up. Inter on their way to a Scudetto, I think. Ben, it feels like it's kind of done. We're going to talk about Juve, but they are now into, let me get this right, they
9
are
points, isn't it?
9 points clear with a game in hand.
Yeah, it's done, isn't it? It is done. I think this kind of Inter juggernaut has kind of rolled on really nicely over the last sort of few weeks. Obviously, they got the victory over Juve, which wasn't necessarily the most convincing, but it was kind of commanding in the same vein, I think. But you know, this weekend couldn't be further from that. They were just incredibly potent in front of goal. That Lautaro goal kind of reminded me almost a bit of, like, it was a bit like Jermaine Defoe-esque, the way he would just shift and shoot it really quickly, get it out of his feet. And sort of, like, I love those kind of goals, kind of growing up watching a striker like him. And yeah, Thuram on the score sheet again, just right place, right time. I'm not sure what I preferred, Martinez's goal or that Inter kit. I've never, like, I'd quite like the Premier League to sort of adopt this wearing away kits at home, but like that orange third kit is so nice. I remember at the start of the season, I was like, I need to get this. But yeah, it was a really, again, against a poor side. And like you said, Ochoa tried his best. There was that save, I think, at 0-0 where it hit the post and then it came back to him and he somehow kept the second one out as well. It was just like, but yeah, Inter seriously impressive. Lautaro Martinez, again, seriously impressive. We've talked about it so many times in the sense that I still don't think he gets the respect he deserves from fans outside of Italy when all of the numbers could be laid out in front of you like you've just reeled off, but people still don't see it. And yeah, I think he's just going up a level season by season as well, becoming so much more kind of clinical, because I think that's one thing, the kind of lazy take that's been labelled at him in the past, and we talked about it before, is because people see him in the World Cup and the World Cup final kind of missing these chances. People are like, well, he's not clinical in front of goal. It's like, you watch that finish at the weekend and tell me that's someone who's not, a quality striker. So yeah, I love Lautaro, and I think it's done and dusted for Inter. I really do.
I think this is it basically done, which is incredible. They should get the second star, which is going to be a hell of a party because they get in it before Milan, and that's the important thing. But there's one more player who I think doesn't quite get the praise he deserves abroad, and it's Bastoni. Now, I've loved this guy for seasons since he arrived at Inter. I started watching him at the stadium. I thought, this guy is just different. Like his ball passing, his awareness, his position, his strength, everything, just an all-round incredible defender and footballer. And I think we're starting to see him really hitting his strides again. I feel like at the beginning of the season he was not quite in full form, but really, really impressive at this part of the season now. Just a fantastic performance from him again. Again, Salernitana quite accommodating, but some of the passes he was pulling off were incredible. And in the past, we've seen Bastoni find himself getting forward as well and chipping in with a few goals, a few assists. Once we get that full form Bastoni again, it's going to be really fun. But I was really, really impressed with his performance. And again, Barella in midfield. Now, I could talk about him forever, but I feel like this is a performance again where we saw him popping up. We saw him popping up all over the field, dictating play, fighting, scrapping, just what he does best. I thought it was just fantastic. So we're seeing those big name players really hitting their strides again. So a fantastic win for Inter. And I'll tell you what, the Inter fans I'm teaching, working with, talking to, they are feeling pretty bloody confident at the moment. I had a debate in class today about if Inter are the best team in the world, because one of them was claiming we are the best team in the world at the moment. If we play anyone, we will beat them. And they definitely want a replay against Man City in the Champions League. They're all ready for a replay. I'm not sure if it would go any differently, but they seem to think so. Elsewhere in the Scudetto race, we do need to talk about the other hand. I walked into a bar this weekend as this game was on, and all I heard was a Juve fan go, "This is a fucking Serie B game." They were really, really not impressed with the quality on show here. Adam, well, there was some quality. The Follow-Run show goal
I was going to say,
insane.
Yeah, what are they talking about? Those goals did not look out of place in Serie A, that's for sure. Foloronshu for that kind of corner routine, whatever you describe as Zidane-esque effort, was just absolutely out of this world, and there's no chance for Szczesny to save that. But Szczesny had a poor performance on the night. Obviously, he lets through that second one through his legs. You could argue it was too easy to get into that position as well. Just looks so overrun. It almost feels like since that Inter game, they've just been shot of any confidence. I mean, I know in the build-up they had that Empoli result at home, but I mean, look, they followed that Inter result with a loss at home to Udinese. They've had this. It's just completely devoid of that kind of optimism they had leading up to that Inter game. And yeah, I don't know what you can say. What's been the catalyst for it? It just feels like they've given up. I think it's mentally they've just conceded and they feel like it's going to be Inter's title regardless. There's nothing that they can do. And I think they've just thrown away results like this, for example, where they've just given the initiative to the away team or whether it be the opponents. And it's just baffling for me personally, but I think it also goes to largely kind of say that Allegri has nothing in terms of tactical kind of nous and how he can change kind of games. I think he's over reliant on certain personnel, and it's interesting to hear the kind of rumors about Chiesa, for example, potentially leaving the summer already, because there seems to be maybe a disliking between the two personalities, and that wouldn't surprise me at all. But yeah, for the sake of his career, I think he'd be better off somewhere else anyway, because I don't think he's going to get much joy at Juventus. But I think if you're Juventus fans, you'd be so pissed off. You've got the most highly paid coach in Allegri, got the highest assembled kind of squad in terms of the amount that they spent on it. And this is kind of the results that they've got. And bear in mind, they're not in Europe as well. So
no, this is it. They've got no excuses excuses when they're up against teams fighting on all fronts. And like this was meant to be their kind of like ace in the pocket was, well, we get a rest every week. And I think just the lack of output he's getting from players like Vlahovic is incredibly lucky that that's a penalty, because the miss in the lead up to that penalty was atrocious. Like really a awful miss. And I think we've talked about him before, but he's getting sod all out of Kostic. Like I don't know what he's done to Kostic, but he was getting so many assists and goals before. He's just become anonymous. I think players like Locatelli, like Rabiot's input has dropped off this season. Now that's probably because he's not playing for a contract again, but still Allegri isn't able to get that output from him. And the one thing for Juve was supposed to be that defensively they're strong. Defensively they are a coherent unit and they just don't let goals in. Verona just ran through them so many times. Like it just felt like the midfield was not there, and Verona were creating so many more chances, looked so much more dangerous. I just feel like you summed it up when you said they've just absolutely thrown the towel in. I think the second they didn't win that Inter game, they just went, they knew they needed to win it, right? And the second they didn't, they've just absolutely collapsed. But Ben, would you be encouraged with the stories about Allegri signing a new contract? Because it looks like it's basically done.
I think so. I feel like obviously he's shown that he can do it before and he can really kind of challenge and win stuff for Juventus, but it just feels like, I don't know. I think you're completely right. I feel like they almost have given up on this season. So if they're looking ahead to next year, then that feels like the right place to start, and at least to kind of securing his future. Because up until that, it felt like they were. I think last year towards the end, before Christmas, we were sort of talking about the fact that there were certain games that they were maybe getting away with, but it sort of felt like once Vlahovic hit form, you could sort of see what they were trying to do, and they looked a bit more convincing. And there was this big kind of question going into that Inter game, because there was so much weight on it of, well, if Juve get a result here, which they easily could, they drew at home to Inter, that maybe they could make that second half of the season theirs, but that hasn't quite happened. But I think you would be encouraged to have Allegri for another year. I don't think there's many better options out there that Juve realistically could go and get that would improve them. And obviously Allegri's got that great track record and pedigree. So yeah, I think I'd be encouraged if I was a Juve fan.
I think honestly, it's a really weird one, because I think, as Adam said, with the whole Chiesa situation, right? One of the few things I saw of promise here was when Alcaraz came on and Chiesa came on. Their little partnership looked a little bit dangerous. They looked like they were kind of lively and running forward and trying to get something. And I feel like if I'm a Juve fan and someone says to me, pick, you can keep Allegri or Chiesa, I'm probably picking Chiesa, because I think
definitely
he's their, like, you know, their franchise player, right? He's the guy who's like, you know, meant to be the next generation of Juve delivering the silverware. And I think Allegri's just been found out a little bit, and just this lack of flexibility in any game is just costing them so much. And I don't know how much the players are on board with him, because if the team have just handed it in like this, I can't see how there's much support for him. But the board love him. The board absolutely love him.
That's the thing.
And they're reducing his wages, so I'm sure that's the reason why they love him as well. But yeah, just shocking for them, and kind of they're now basically fighting for second spot, because Milan are only 1 point behind them now. 1 point, 2 points, 2 points behind them.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't bet on Milan not finishing second now. So I think they've all of a sudden gone from a Scudetto race to okay, let's try and make this look respectable. Bad times for Juve. We all enjoy it, really. Sorry.
We do.
But yeah, for Verona, very quickly, I went in pretty hard on Verona are going to survive. I was like, I just know they're going to do this. They're like Sunderland in that like 5-6 year period. I think they've got one more fight left in them. Adam, do you think they're going to stay up? I think they showed a lot of quality in this game.
Do you know what helps them? I think there's some worse sides that probably would replace them. The likes of Swallow, for example. We had to cough that one. We don't have to. But yeah, I think there are a few teams that are looking over their shoulders right now, and I think down that kind of bottom mix. There's so many teams that are going to be in and out of that relegation mix towards the end of this season. I just do one certainty will be Salernitana, obviously, and then potentially Calgary, but we'll see. But I think, it's a free-for-all for that last place at this moment in time. So let's wait and see. But I think fantastic credit to Marco Baroni for the way he's kind of persevered, and especially in that January transfer window, the amount of players they shifted, sold on, and he had to assemble this new squad together and get a tune out of them and still get them fighting as well. Absolutely. Plaudits for him. It's insane. Like you say, go on.
The turnover has been insane in personnel. Like, the team looks completely different to the first game of the season, and they're somehow playing better. And you're like, you know what, fair play. Suslov looks incredible since he's come in. He genuinely there's so much quality. I really like Folorunsho. He played on loan at Bari last year. I think it's the same guy. And he was really, really good. He's on loan from Napoli. And there's a lot of Napoli fans already being like, okay, let's wait until we get this guy next year. Obviously, not just that incredible hit, but an all-round a very good player. And I think, there's just enough quality in that team. Duda as well had a very good game. Like, there's just enough quality there for them to stay up, I think. I really hope they do it, because I do quite like Verona. But let's leave that one there, and let's go for, the big game, the big story this week, even if the game wasn't particularly eventful. Insert Grandpa Simpson entrance meme. Mazzarri has only been here, how long has he been here? 2 months? 3 months?
Yeah, 2-3 months at max. Yeah.
Incredible. Well, it looks like Calzona, the current Slovakia manager, is going to live every FM player's dream, and he's going to manage Slovakia and Napoli until the end of the season, as he comes to firefight whatever the hell Napoli have found themselves in. They are currently miles away from the European race now. I'm just going to get the numbers.
Off.
9 points off the European race. Yeah, I think they're still currently on record on their way for the worst title defense in Serie A history as well. So, Mazzarri was, again, another manager who was supposed to bring defensive solidity, was supposed to bring a bit of, sensibleness and a bit of, let's go back to basics. This was just all over the shop. I don't know what he's done to Anguissa, but he looks so far off it. He was just, it reminded me when I think it was Matt Letizia, and it's not no, it was Souness when he was talking about Ali Dia. Do you remember that guy?
Oh,
he was really good at being where the football had just been. I saw like this Anguissa performance. He was just slightly behind everything, but I think it was just the whole midfield. It was a complete mess. The defense was nowhere, and I honestly don't know how Genoa didn't win this game. But it's just been a complete shambles at Napoli since he took over, right?
Yeah, it's been an absolute mess. It's not very often that you say, actually, the previous coach was actually better than you, and that's saying quite a lot for Napoli. Like, Rudy Garcia was terrible. But Mazzarri, for whatever reason, just didn't instill any confidence or style of football, because that's what they were craving, is just getting it back to the simples that got them in terms of that title run last season. And obviously just managed to piss people off again. And it's just so poor from just generally the way gone about business. And it's such a shame, really. But Mazzarri, I think, obviously just didn't in people's heads and minds, really, when he came into the role. I mean, obviously, he has got that kind of fandom from his earlier spell with Napoli, but I think obviously Di Lorenzo saw it as, we need to be in a Champions League. We can't afford to be this far behind at this point in the season. There's still time to turn it around. And there's arguably a winnable game against Barcelona. So they probably see Calzone as the opportunity to kind of restart the style of football. We just have to wait and see. But it's a bit tragic for Napoli at the moment.
Yeah, and it says a lot that it's only been Ngonge who's come in, and he's already rescued them a few times already with goals. Like, he's been the one that's come up at key moments, and I think a lot of Simeone scores absolute bangers, but he doesn't score regularly. He looked so off it in this game. And again, as I said, the midfield just looked completely lost. Mazzocchi, I don't think has been a great signing since he's joined. Just a bit all over the place for Napoli. But for Genoa, Friendrup gets another goal. He's on a bit of a run. And Genoa look to be pretty much safe. I think they can
They
can concentrate on a nice, comfortable mid-table finish. But Ben, how do you feel about manager being national team and coach at the same time? It's quite a nice throwback. I feel like we've not seen it since like the 90s.
Yeah, it's such like a FIFA career mode thing as well.
It's
isn't
great.
It? It's like, oh, you can get international job offers as well if you like. It's like you can be the Arsenal manager and manage Australia. It's like it feels very like not the done thing in modern football anymore. But I quite like it. I think we need more of that kind of stuff. Because obviously there's an international break coming up quite quickly as well, and obviously a massive. Are Slovakia qualified for the Euros?
They have.
Obviously, there's a massive tournament on the horizon as well, so it's going to be very interesting to see how he juggles that. And we know that Napoli is not necessarily the most forgiving, of kind of fan bases and clubs in general. Obviously, they're on their third manager already this season, so it could go well. It could also go tits up. It's Napoli. I wouldn't be surprised with either. Yeah.
This is exactly. It's never boring. It's never boring at that place. But yeah, it'll be interesting because he has managed in Serie A previously. He's managed at Empoli in the past, and his coaching staff is quite interesting because he's brought in a few coaches who worked with Napoli under Spalletti, and he's bringing back now. The role is yet to be declared, but he's bringing back Marek Hamšík because he doesn't have his coaching badges yet. Hamšík, but he's being brought back in some kind of role. And just seeing Hamšík
hairstylists, maybe.
Yeah, no. Well, fingers crossed. They can all do it. Romania when they just all went blonde, but they could just all have the Mohican. That's what we want to see. But just seeing that guy back in Napoli is going to be incredible. Absolutely love Hamšík. So he's already won the fans over just by bringing him back. But I think genuinely the coaching team he's brought in is quite encouraging because a lot of them were there for the fantastic season Napoli had last season. Yeah. So hopefully it'll build a few bridges and there'll be a few familiar faces. But seeing Osimhen sat in the stand, kind of watching this game, fucking hell, he must just be like WhatsApping his agent, just like, right, okay, so what are the offers? Like, let's talk genuine, concrete offers, because it just did not look. I don't think he's going to be in a rush to come back, honestly. Like, obviously, Nigeria played him injured anyway, so I'm not sure how fit he's going to be, but he did not look particularly keen to get out there again. But let's leave that one there for now. And we're going to go to the race for Europe, I think. And let's go for, let's start with Bologna and then we'll talk about Sassuolo and Atalanta. Bologna back in the groove, absolutely smashing it. Huge win in the capital. And I think the beginning of this game, I watched the first half in full, then had to go out for the second half. But Lazio were just rampant at the beginning. Immobile had a chance called off for offside. It looked like Bologna could not get a foothold in the game at all. Of course, the first goal from Isaacson, really beautiful back heel from Immobile to
good
set
1-2 with Chiro, wasn't it? Yeah,
incredible. Really, like just that Sarri attack you expect to see, quick, short passes, incisive,
explosive. Yeah,
I thought Lazio were fantastic at the beginning, but then it says everything about Bologna that they managed to get back in the game. And towards the end of it, Lazio don't look like coming anywhere near winning it. It's just an incredible performance from Bologna, right? And a huge, huge statement. They had a bit of a wobble, and we were worried about where they were going to end up. But Adam, they are fully on the charge now.
Yeah, I think what's going to benefit them is the fact that they aren't in the Coppa Italia. They can concentrate on just the league fixtures now, and obviously then they don't have to worry about Europe, unlike their kind of teams that are competing for those spots at the moment as well. So I think they're in prime position right now, providing they don't have any injuries. And you look at the way they approached it, like you say, Lazio were all over them in the first half, it's fair to say. But the error by Provedel, that was caused by the fact that Bologna stuck to their philosophy of pressure and just maintaining that kind of just pushing people up to the final third. That was forced by Fabian. That causes the first interception, and then it's a goal. And then you look at the way that it's scored the second through Xerxes. I mean, fantastic finish by Xerxes, but all that play down that wing, crossing it over from, was it Mads Christian or Jensen? Is it Jensen? I think is his name. But the Danish bloke. Again, fantastic kind of play. And I think it's unlucky to say that Bologna didn't win by more in the end, because the way Lazio kind of faffed about, and I don't know if they had a mind on Wednesday's game or the Champions League match, should I say, against Bayern Munich, because obviously that's probably playing on their mind that they don't want to get injured. They want to be playing at their prime position for that one. But full marks to Lazio. Bologna, should I say. And I think, yeah, it's down to Bologna at this moment in time, and potentially Atalanta, as we'll cover it off in a minute. But Isaacson is a player that all I would say is, yeah, that guy just looks better and better every time I see him for Lazio. He just looks like he's adapted so well. And next season could be a very interesting season to see how much he pushes on in terms of his game, because, yeah, he's a hell of a bargain. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, he's a player people are really excited about. And I think with the fact that there's the stories this week that Felipe Anderson is going to be signing for Juve on a free, I think it's important that a player like Isaacson gets the chances and finds his feet now, like ready for next season. For Bologna, though, this is their best ever start to a Serie A season since the 3-point era. So they've now earned 45 points in the opening 25 games, the first time ever. Absolutely incredible season for them. And it's the first time they've won away after being behind since June last season, so the 4th of June 2023. So just a huge statement for them to be able to turn it around. And again, yeah, of course, Xerxes was absolutely key. Sailor Makers having a bit of a resurgence at Bologna. I thought it would be a really clever, obviously, kind of like De Ketelaere, right? Didn't really thrive at Milan. He's gone elsewhere, and I think he's just. I've always been impressed when he's played for Bologna this year, and of course, Captain Fantastic Lewis Ferguson just dominating it again. Scotland are quietly getting quite a good team together. I think we were talking about Billy Gilmore. They've got Lewis Ferguson. They've got a hell of a midfielder. Absolutely fair play. But we do need to move on to Sassuolo, Atalanta, and well, just incredible. The Atalanta goalkeeper takes all the plaudits here. Now I'm going to get his name right. Kanaseki?
Yeah.
Yeah, Kanaseki. Just absolutely incredible. Saves 2 penalties from Pinamonti, and it's in both directions. And you can just see him reading Pinamonti's mind, right? The second he saves the first one, he's like, I know you're going that way. I know you're going that way. And his celebration after he saves it is just incredible. Yeah. What little fight Sassuolo had kind of went out of the window the second that second save went through, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, you could see Pinamonti's kind of face after the second one. He's just like desolate. He just does not know what to do anymore. And it's not like he's a striker that scores a lot of goals. So that would have been a real dent to his confidence. But all I would say is the Swallow were all over the place as well in this match. Concili probably lets in some really soft goals in this match, in particular the third one from Bacca, who shoots from distance and is not expected to score it, but Concili should do better in terms of that save. But yeah, Pasalic, for example, and De Ketelaere, I think it was, wasn't it, for the second? Yeah, I mean, they just looks really good. I mean, the only redeeming feature for Concili was the fact that he managed to save from Scamacca. Scamacca should make it 4-0 at that time, and it baffles me how he didn't finish that one off as well, to be fair. But a really good day in the office for Atalanta. Kanaseki takes all the plaudits for those saves. Cop Miners on top of his game. It's actually Cop Miners that I've just seen that scored the goal, not De Ketelaere. But yes, it was fantastic. And we said on Thursday's pods, Rory, this was an important win for Atalanta because their run-up is pretty rough. They're playing all the top sides now until March, so they really need to make that win. And I think it's next Sunday they got Milan away, isn't it? AC, so massive game for both sides in that one.
Odds of De Ketelaere scoring, considering they don't have the lone player rule here. I reckon it's absolute.
That's quite high.
Dead certain he's going to get a goal. Absolutely. Well, for Sassuolo, they've now just, my God, they are so terrible. So this is in 5 games they've managed to draw 1. They've conceded 3, 4, 3. Their last win was, of course, against Fiorentina. Of course, it was. But I think they've waited too long to sack the manager now. Like Dionisi has been, the writing's been on the wall for him for a while. It doesn't feel like there's any real. Like bringing someone in now, I don't know if it really makes a difference. Players like Lauriente have completely disappeared. Like he had such an exciting arrival to Serie A last year. Enrique in midfield just looks completely lost. Pinamonti, when they signed him and they put so much money into him, people were saying like, look,
that's a lot of money.
He kind of did all right in Serie B for a bit, but he's not that guy. It feels like they're going to go down, right? They're my favourites to go to join Salernitana and Cagliari.
I think based on form and the way they've kind of, as you allude to, they've not really shown anything in the last few matches. We could expand it back, I suppose, for the last 5. I mean, even that result that they fluked, I would say, to an extent against Fiorentina. Do you remember where they won? I think it was 2-1 on that day. They really, I think, just by the grit of their teeth, managed to get that result over the line. And that was through some hard work through Matteo Ferrari at the back as well. Like, his experience really told. But yeah, they are just shambolic at the back. And Dionisi, I'm surprised he wasn't sacked earlier, in fairness. Like you say, I think there is still potential to save them. And, you know, when you've got Domenico Berardi in your squad, anything is possible. But I think the games that are coming in thick and fast, they need to get some sort of form. And at the moment, it's not going to be with Dionisi. I don't know what they're planning for. So it feels like they're planning for Serie B right now, Rory.
Well, it's been a hell of a ride for Sassuolo. It's been a hell of a while. They came very close to getting Europe for a few seasons. They've been a real kind of fairy tale, if you like. Huge businesses buying teams in villages and turning them into something. But it's been a hell of a ride. It'll be a shame to see them go, I think. But I think they will be going. But Milan fans, well, no, actually, Monza fans are going to be screaming at us. The game of the weekend, without a doubt. Monza are back. We've been waiting for them to do this all season. Every time they've played at home, we've been like, oh, it's a tricky place to go, Monza. It's a tricky place to go. And it's not been all season. Well, yesterday, they finally got it done. And they put their local rivals to the sword 4-2. Absolutely incredible. But Ben, did you see any, like, this game? The Pulisic goal was fantastic. Jovic getting sent off for stupidity. This game had everything.
Yeah, I didn't manage to catch it, but it felt like one of those games where you sort of have to do a double take at your phone when you see the scoreline. But Milan have just been kind of weirdly inconsistent this year, and this kind of result isn't necessarily that much of a surprise. So yeah, I mean, a great result for Monza, but I didn't see this one coming.
It was. I think honestly, Milan kind of turned up, and Adam, you said it. They didn't really seem to have much of a game plan. The second the game went against them. So the second the Pessina penalty goes in, which is right at the end of the second half, then Milan completely collapsed and concede again in basically the next minute, 5 minutes afterwards. Like, it felt like they just did not know how to react, right?
Absolutely shell shocks. And it is through stupidity for that penalty, if you look at the incident, because 3 separate individual mistakes by Malik Thiaw, who first misses the header for when the ball is thrown into the box. Then he fouls Juric on the outside of the box. So the referee plays advantage because he can see that I think it was Pessina, or actually it was Danny Motta. Danny Motta then runs onto the ball. He's in the box, and then he decides to fall in and just bundle him to the floor. And he gives the referee no choice but to give a penalty kick. But it was baffling from that moment onwards. But yeah, all I would say is for 30 minutes of that first half, nothing really seemed to be going on. Like, apart from Milan Juric having a header that was kind of tipped onto the post or bar at the time, there was nothing on for Monza. And then just the stupidity in those moments, but also the fact that second half they kind of came out. They felt like there was something going to happen, and then Luka Jovic, just the stupidity of just like flapping his hands at one of the defenders, and then he gets sent off because it's reviewed by VAR. So it puts Milan on the back foot. To their credit, though, through Olivier Giroud, obviously his experience, they managed to push on. But by the time it kind of was on the counter-attack for the third goal, you could see Milan had just literally collapsed. They'd used all the energy just to get themselves back into the match. Like you rightly allude to, Pulisic has a fantastic goal, and I thought, wow, Monza have thrown this game away. But they managed to get 2 quick goals, and the last one being sealed by the actual youth player Colombo, who just seals it. He doesn't do the celebration, but it was a superb.
He kind of does a bit.
Kind of seals it.
He kind of goes like,
does. And then he realizes, and then
he kind of calms himself down. But it just looking at the goal times, it's like 45th minute, and then 51st minute, 90th minute, 95th minute. It is literally like the second that goal goes in, their heads go completely and they just collapse. Obviously, playing with 10 men doesn't bloody help. But there's also a moment where Giroud throws his hands at someone on the edge of the box. I thought if the Jovic one's a red card, then Giroud is very, very fortunate there. And I'm surprised VAR didn't pick up on that one. But we should talk about Monza really and focus on how good they were, I think, because players like Danny Motta, right, Matteo Pessina, These are players that we've always said, like, especially Motta as well. I think I saw him when they were in Serie B, and he was absolutely tearing it up. There's a lot of quality in that squad. They've been a bit quiet this year. They've just kind of been classically mid-table. But this win, all of a sudden, are they looking like it's all very tight down there? They're only 3 points behind Torino, 4 points behind Lazio. Could they get in the fight? This could be a real kickstart for them.
It could be, but I think they're going to stay mid-table. Personally, that's where I see it. Don't forget, this is the first time that they've beaten a team in the top half of the table this season, whereas last season they were just doing wins for fun. They were beating these kind of sides, and they were taking those kind of games to their kind of away fixtures as well. Obviously, we joked in our WhatsApp group about Bunga Bunga was probably on offer for this game. But to be fair, Monza did fantastically well. Palladino, I do rate him. Yeah, I just think it's consistency this season, and I think they've done enough to stay up in the league. And maybe next season they could push on, Rory. I think what they're starting to get to grips with is they're adding a bit more quality in their squad, because it used to be a lot of journeymen, right, when they first came up. But they've got some solid players with De Gregorio in goal, for example, like you alluded to, Danny Motta, Colpani as well. He chases down the ball for Danny Motta's goal as well. So there's some really good talented players in that squad, and I've got a lot of respect for Monza. They're kind of my second favorite team in that league, so to speak. But yeah, I think that's all down to the work that Berlusconi and obviously Uncle Festa, as we call it, have laid down the groundwork. So it was one of their favorite fixtures, right, against Milan.
Well, that's it, exactly. And they're very much going for this. Like, they want to be the place that develops Italian players, and they want to be the place that's like, getting those young players and selling them on and stuff. And I think, but one transfer that did completely pass me by until I saw him up front was Juric. I was like, what the hell did he go
from Hellas?
That guy gets around. He's at Salernitana, Verona, and now Monza. He keeps falling upwards. I'm not sure how he's doing it, but I was really surprised to see him up front for Monza. And again, Pablo Mari at the back. I was like, oh, there he is. Good to see him still going. But Pessina, I'm just delighted to see him in fantastic form. So I remember in the Euros for Italy, he was so good. But he kind of had a few injuries. He went missing a little bit. And it's good to see him absolutely flying again. For Milan, just, the lack of consistency this year is just baffling. And it will end up, will it? We've said that the cushion for them to get fourth is so massive that they can basically do this every so often. But with Atalanta and Bologna now, Bologna 4 wins in a row, Atalanta 5 wins in a row. Maybe it's not as far as we thought it was. But they'll need to shake this one off pretty quickly. Jovic, that's just so stupid from him. It's so stupid. Elsewhere in Serie A, very quickly, Torino won again, a 2-0 win against Lecce. And Udinese drew with Cagliari, of course they did.
Specialist.
No use to man nor beast, that point for either of those teams. And Frosinone 0, Roma 3. I don't know if you saw the clip of De Rossi absolutely losing shit on the sideline. I think I commented on Twitter, like, Ben, just imagining the thought of losing a game and going into that guy in the changing room. I think I'd have personal security with me.
Yeah. Oh God. I don't think it's like, especially, I mean, we talked about it like when he was first appointed. It's just someone that you don't want to let down, but not because they're necessarily that like father figure kind of manager. It's like they would be disappointed. It's like you just would not want to go. And I think De Rossi has got an element of that about him for sure, because of the passion that he shows and the way, he was such an icon of the club. But you would not want to be on the other end of a De Rossi hairdryer, so to speak, would you? I don't think.
I'm going to say it's like that older brother energy that just kick the fuck out if he really wants to.
Yeah. Like, have you seen The Bear? It's like the older brother in The Bear.
No, massive. I love that. That's a massive shout. I really love that on the sidelines. And Adam Huijsen giving it to the Frosinone fans. Di Francesco got very upset about it afterwards.
He did, didn't he? He just doesn't like the disrespect that he's shown to the club since he turned them down for Roma initially to make the transfer. Bear in mind, Frosinone have kind of like a feeder club mentality with Juventus, where they were going to loan these prospects, and then you've seen it with Sule and how much he's benefited. So I think they thought that he disrespected them by doing that celebration. But what a hit! It has to be said. Unbelievable. What a hit! Incredible. He looks like a defender to look out for as well.
No, I'm really, really excited about him. And Moon, getting a goal. He's not had many opportunities at Roma. I think, like, I remember when Mourinho signed him, and he was like, "Well, if he was any good, he wouldn't be coming to us," which is just such a fucking incredible quote. So he obviously got barely any chances. But whenever he's played, I think he has chipped in with the odd goal and assist. It was good to see him get on the score sheet. And then a Paredes penalty at the end. This impressive. Obviously, these are teams that Roma should be beating, but I think it's still been impressive from De Rossi. It's still been very, very impressive, and Roma will be delighted with him because there has been a massive turnaround. They're now firmly in the European conversation, and they weren't looking under Jose. So fantastic stuff for them as well. But I think that is everything, guys. That's all the action. There is, of course, Champions League this week. Arsenal are back in the knockout round of the Champions League. Please don't let me down. Please don't let me down. I've been waiting for a very long time for this. But we will be back on Friday, of course, to discuss all things Champions League, Cool Kids Club, and even Cooler Kids Club. Of course, we have Inter taking on Atletico. Stories again this week as Simeone being linked to the Inter job, which is massive. And Napoli taking on Barcelona. Huge. Boys, thanks as always. It's been a pleasure. Ben, where can people find you so we can get you to 11K? Where can people find you online?
Right to 11K begins now. Ben Talks Football on TikTok, and then just Ben Bowman on Twitter as well. So yeah, nice one.
Beautiful. Adam, anything to say before I let these people go home?
Yeah, just get to 10% of that total, right? That'll be great for us. Exactly. So let's get there eventually. Just download the app and follow us, and then don't worry about the app ever after. There we go. Yeah. There's our advice.
Beautiful, guys. Well, thank you for joining us. As I said, we will be back on Friday with a review of all the midweek action and a preview of the weekend's action. As always, hit the like and subscribe button down here somewhere. You can find us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Insta and TikTok at Anglo-Italian Pod. And basta. I think we're done. Thank you. Bye. We'll see you later, guys. Ciao.
Ciao.